Well, hello, my friends, and happy 2026. Welcome to the new year. I am so excited to have you back on Empire Secrets. Thank you once again for joining me for yet another year. And I'm so excited about what's ahead. And I'm not just saying that. I know that we often say that when we start something, but I have never had this much clarity, this much drive, this much intentionality behind everything that I'm doing. And I can't wait to share this growth with you in 2026. This podcast is now 2.5 years old, I think, which is crazy to think. Absolutely nuts. I have to say, I definitely hit record before I was ready. There are many, many times where I don't even think I'm ready now to have a podcast, but I was watching Sunday Today yesterday because I'm recording this on Monday, and the sort of spotlight, the conversation, the deep interview was with Mel Robbins. And, I know a little bit about Mel. I follow her podcast a little bit and know about her let them theory. So I didn't think I was going to learn anything new. I was just like, oh, this is going to be interesting, but I wasn't really expecting to get too much from her segment. And the thing that most struck with me was learning her backstory. I did not know that she had been a lawyer. She had been really successful, but she hated her job. And when she got pregnant and had her baby, was on maternity leave, she told her husband, I'm not going back there. And he's like, that's great. That's fine. But you need to get another job. You need to make sure that within 4 months, when your maternity leave ends, you have another job lined up for you. And guess what? She did. However, that also wasn't her dream job. And so this idea that she had multiple iterations of her life, and these were like wildly different things. I can't remember what she did after she was a lawyer. So after she left her law firm, she did something else. And I don't remember, they edit it for speed. So a lot of these details, I'm sure, got lost. In fact, I made a mental note to listen to the full interview on the Sunday Today, I forgot what it's called, Conversations with Willie Geist podcast, because they do run the interview, I guess, in full there, or at least a much bigger version of the interview. Point being, I was so inspired by the fact that this hugely successful woman who has, I think, the top 3 podcast in the world, had multiple iterations of her life and her business. And, this wasn't in her 20s. I think this was more in her 30s and 40s. And so she did start her podcast in a closet, like a lot of people with successful podcasts began. I feel grateful because I started my podcast and I had a decent mic and I had a webcam, and, I'm not recording in a closet. I have my own home office. So I feel so privileged. But it was just inspiring that you don't always get it right the first time and you just have to keep going. And so this is exactly the energy I'm bringing with me into the new year. And I hope you are too. I hope you are not looking at this version of success that might be in your mind and thinking that there's a linear path to get there. It is ups and downs. There are twists and turns. The important thing is that we're moving forward and that we're learning with every single step that we take. We need to be learning with every single step that we take, right? We're not just doing work and hustling for the sake of work and hustling. The goal and the idea and the whole game that we're playing here in business is that we are improving and growing every step of the way. So with that said, I wanted to share with you what my word of the year is for 2026. I have gone through a couple of different words at this point, and I really think that the word for me this year, I do have a word that I feel God gave me, and I'll tell you the fun story behind when and how that happened. But the thing that I'm like most really clinging onto as my vision for 2026 is not really a word. It's more of an identity shift. And I wish I could point to it. I had a Post-it note until not too long ago, which one of the things I want to talk about is how I completely reorganized my office. So I want to talk about that in a minute. But I had a Post-it note that was a quote from Myron Golden. And the quote was, making wealth is easy, or becoming wealthy is easy. You just have to become the person who do the things that are necessary in order to become wealthy. So the gist of what he was trying to say, or that he said, and I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, is that we need to become the person who does the thing. We need to become the person who is wealthy, and wealth then becomes inevitable. And so I've been thinking a lot about identity shift, and how I think in the past, in the last several years of, planning, okay, what is my year going to look like? What is my focus going to be? What are the things that I'm growing in right now? What's working? What's not working? What do I want to keep? What do I want to double down on? What definitely can go away? I have never really thought about the identity shift that I feel I'm like it's beyond being called to make right now. I feel like it's completely inevitable. It is the thing that's happening right now. And so I wanted to share this with you because I feel like this might be inspiring to some of you. And that is the identity shift into a 7-figure founder. I don't remember exactly when this started, but this phrase, 7-figure founder, started really, I think it was around, Q4. So October, November, around there, I started hearing this phrase over and over and over in my head. And every time I read it, it like really stuck with me. Every time I thought about it, it like made me stop and pay attention to it. And I know that part of this podcast even is documenting that journey towards $1 million business. I follow people who literally made $1 million last month. But point being, it's almost less about the number, and it's about the identity of being a 7-figure founder. And so I have written it out in a good old Post-it note that is right in front of my face. So it's taped to the bottom of my monitor. And so I look at it now every single day, multiple times a day. And all it says is 7-figure founder. And the idea, again, is less about hitting 7 figures, because that's going to happen at some point. The biggest shift is becoming that person, becoming the founder who runs a 7-figure business. And for me, what that means most critically and in the most practical of ways that shows up all the time in my business is managing my time. And we all know that time is the most valuable resource. It's the thing that you can't create more of. You can make more money, but you cannot make more time. And so this idea that I am holding myself accountable to every day, to every hour of the day, into every 15-minute increment of the day. And so I'm going to talk about that last one in just a second, because I know it sounds really intense, and it kind of is. But once again, I just dropped a bunch of papers. This thing that is already greasy, and I'll explain why really quickly. The new one came in the mail last night, and I was starting to write in it as I was doing my nighttime routine, which is putting a ton of castor oil and almond oil on my face. And that's why the cover is a little oily. But the 1% Diary by Stephen Bartlett has been amazing. So I used it for the first time last quarter, the last 12-week year, because if you follow me, you know I'm obsessed with the 12-week year. And so I used it then. And the thing that I found most helpful is not only to only have 3 goals per quarter, but it's so simple. The layout is so simple, whereby each day starts at 5 a.m., ends at midnight. And I am prompted by looking at this day. So each day is, 2 sides of the page. On the one side, I've got my tasks. On the other side, I've got those time blocks that I mentioned. And just by looking at that, I am prompted to record what I'm doing with every hour of my day. And yeah, I don't know if you're anything like me, but my entire adult life, I have this constant feeling that time is going by so quickly. I feel, if I look at like, oh man, what did I do last month? And I could answer that. Like, I know what I did. However, it always feels like it's not enough for the amount of time that I spend. And I just think, I don't know if that feeling's ever going to go away. But when I was looking at the past year, which I'm also going to talk about in a second, I had this really comforting feeling knowing that every hour of the last 3 months of my life was accounted for. Every hour of my day was recorded. And that might sound like a lot, but to me, it's just like sometimes I'm doing it as I go. So I use iCalendar for my schedule. So if I have meetings, if I have to be somewhere, it's on there. I'm working on such few things right now that the rest of the times are kind of blocked off for those things. And those things are always written on my today's tasks inside of my 1% diary. And so I don't have to like assign them a time as much as like, okay, I know that I have to work on these things and this is the time I have for those tasks. And so it's less like from 11 to 12, I'm going to be recording this podcast, but it's more about like, I know I need to get the podcast recorded. I know I need to get my video ads recorded. I know I need to send out a couple emails and these are the emails I need to send out today. And this is the time I have for it. And I know like when my day is over, when my kid is home or when I need to take him somewhere or we have another activity, I know until when I'm able to work. And so, aside from the nitty gritty of how I'm using it, which I kind of really went off the deep end there, I just wanted to bring you this idea that for me has been completely life-changing, which is being able to record what I'm doing every hour of the day has given me so much peace about, and of course, made me more productive, made me more aware. I think that's the thing, just like awareness of how I'm spending my time. Next thing I wanted to talk to you about is this idea of like keeping track of 15 minutes. And what I mean by that is I watched a reel by Hermosi, I think, in December sometime. And he was on a podcast. He was just talking about this exercise that he does sometimes, which is he takes a timer and on a given day, he will set the timer for 15 minutes. And every 15 minutes that the timer goes off, he has to write down what he did in the 15 minutes. And sometimes it's as simple as like one word, right? It doesn't have to be a long sentence or paragraphs, obviously, but it's just like, boop, that's what I did in the last 15 minutes. And I started doing that. And it's funny because in the podcast interview, he also said like, oh man, I know it's so good and I know I need to do it more. I don't do it enough. But I was like, what? I'm going to do it. And so I started doing it. I don't do it every day, but when I know I need to work on something, I set the timer. And sure enough, it helps me keep track. Like you are never then just giving yourself an unlimited amount of time to do something. And I'm going to talk about what my 3 big goals are for this 12-week year that's beginning today. But I want to just share with you, I wanted to share with you that 15-minute exercise because it was a total game changer in regards to really being aware of every 15-minute increment of my life. And again, thinking as a 7-figure founder and putting that intentionality behind what I'm doing with my time and making sure that the things I'm working on are the things that are actually moving the needle towards the goals that I've set for myself. With that said, here are the 3 main goals for this 12-week year. And before I get into them, I'll just say that in the past, I had so many more goals. I used to have like 5 or 6 goals. And I realized with this big pivot that I'm making right now in my business, going from launching the Brand Video Accelerator to a more evergreen model, that is a huge shift in how I'm selling it, in how it's being delivered, in how I can get my clients results much faster time frame. That's a question that I'm constantly asking myself. How can I get people to a completed brand video faster? How can we do this faster, right? I want them to have the transformation and I want them to have growth before they even complete the brand video, but completing the brand video is super important too. With that said, have been doing. Oh, so I guess this is number 3, but it's kind of number 1 in my head right now, if that makes sense. So number 1 goal is tied to what I was just talking about, which is restructuring my core offer. I again have shifted from a launch model to an evergreen model. So the idea is that my program needs to be built kind of in a completely different way. And if I'm being honest, I'm still working out what exactly that looks like. Is it a much longer program? Am I giving people a lot more time? Or am I giving people the opportunity to go deep and actually get it done in a much shorter amount of time? And I'm leaning towards the latter. So these things are being defined and finalized right now. The second big goal, which is really number 1, is my new funnel. So my entire business is now focused on bringing people in, warming people up, getting them to trust me faster, and then sending them to my core offer, right? And so what that looks like right now is ads and content driving people to the instant yes machine. The instant yes machine is a huge trust builder. It's emotional Red Bull for your copy. Every time you use it, it helps you remember that I exist. It reminds you of my frameworks. And so again, 100% it's focused on giving you amazing results, which is why the testimonials are incredible. But it was also built to bring people closer to me and my world and remind them of who I am and send them to my website and all of these little bits and pieces of this tool that really help people move further along in my funnel. So right now, the way that funnel is structured is that people then are introduced to the instant yes machine, and some of the upsells are all like complementary to that tool. So whether it's the version of the tool that helps them with their sales page and emails, I get such amazing. I'm so blessed that my emails have gotten such amazing responses and people really do enjoy reading them. Obviously, it's not for everybody. I get my fair share of unsubscribes, but for the most part, people have stayed on my email list for a very long time. And obviously, growing that email list is a huge, huge priority for this year. And so anyway, so the Instant Yes Machine email version is in that funnel. I also have a couple other things in that funnel, which are my brand stories that convert mini course. This is a course that has converted for me over and over again. People take that course and they are sold on me, sold on my framework, sold on this idea that they can use their own unique brand story to stand out, to cut through the noise, to build trust, and to get people into the world faster. And then finally, I do have something that I'll probably not have on there for very long, but I am offering audits. So it's one asset that you can send my way and I will take a look at it and I will give you an immense amount of feedback. But it's a lot about testing that first perception that people have when they first meet you. So what is your website telling them? What is your sales page telling them? How is it making them feel? And this is like, it's almost like taking a kid to Chuck E. Cheese. Like for me, giving that kind of feedback, I thrive on it. I love giving people that kind of like bare bones, naked truth. Like this is the impression you're giving. And it's a great mirror. It's a great diagnostic tool, basically, based on feelings, based on emotion, based on like a lot of subjective stuff. And also what actual words you're using and how they might be impacting people. I love doing that. And the reason it might not stay on the funnel very long is just that it's very time and labor intensive. So it's there if people want it, but it's not for everyone. And then once people finish going through that funnel, then they are going to land on my training. So my training is going to be all about how to cut through the noise and build trust in 2026. That's the title of the training for now, because we're in the beginning of the year. Obviously, over time, it's going to, there's going to be a slightly different angle to it. But the whole premise of the training is bringing people into my world, teaching them about the trust triggers, the 4 trust triggers. I've got you. I get you. I've got you. Oh my gosh, I'm out of order here. I get you. I care about you. I've got you. And finally, we vibe. Our personalities align. And so what does that mean? why is that important to create, to really activate those 4 trust triggers the moment that people meet you? How does that impact the sales cycle and how long it takes for people to know and trust you? What are the things that I stand for? What are the things I stand against? That's kind of going to come up a lot in the content that I create. So some of it will show up in the webinar as well, of course. And then make the invitation to my program, right? And so honestly, you guys, that is it. I am focused on restructuring my signature offer, which is happening like right now. It's going to be finished very soon. I'm focused on the instant yes machine funnel, bringing new people into my world, and then content and growing my audience, growing my email list. So the way that I'm going to do that is publishing regularly, as well as running visibility ads, as well as some collaborations as well. So those are the big goals that I have for 2026. I have not put any sort of measurement around those goals. So yes, I want to hit 7 figures this year, but, and I'm going to keep myself accountable to like where I am in that process. But really the shift for me in becoming the 7-figure founder and taking on that identity has been a lot more about how am I managing my time? How am I handling the day-to-day, the minute by minute, in order to achieve that vision? And if I feel proud of how I'm doing that, I know that's like super woo-woo and subjective, but that's the thing that is going to bring me the most joy this year in regards to achieving my goals. I want to focus on doing the things that get me to my goals, to get me to, the vision of the business that I want to build. But I'm less focused on revenue numbers. And that's just the way I want to operate my business. I think everyone tells you you need to be hitting certain numbers. And I'm very, very aware that this is not a hobby. This is a business that needs to be making money. And if I'm being super honest, needs to be making a lot more money than it's making right now. And a huge part of that was because I took some downtime last year. I took some time to regroup, restructure. We got a bunch of brand videos done last year. So there was a lot of delivery on my part. And this year I'm going to be focused on volume. In fact, I promised I would share the actual word of the year. So the identity of the year is 7-figure founder. And the word of the year is multiply. And so I want to take the foundation that I've built and I want to multiply it. I just want the numbers. I want the impact. And by numbers, I mean like people, individual people, and lots of them, to whether they buy from me or not. I just want them to be impacted by my message. So with that said, I'm curious what your word of the year is, whether this stuck with you, whether you have an identity for your year. And I'd love to hear from you. Share with me on Instagram. Just tag me at Brandmagnetic. I would absolutely love to hear what your vision is for this year. And last but not least, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to this really amazing exercise. There's no opt-in required. It's not my exercise. It is by somebody else who I follow, who happens to be an executive coach for Silicon Valley executives, or at least like that's how I knew of her, through a friend of mine. And she has a really fantastic year in review exercise. I highly encourage you to take some time to get this done sooner than later, before, January slips away. For me, in all honesty, it took me quite a while. So give yourself, a couple of hours to do this exercise. I promise you it is life-changing. The big part of this exercise is mapping out what your year was like last year and what places, people, events, what things like really marked your year month by month. And so you're literally scrolling through all of your photos and videos on your camera roll. And, you're doing this on paper, which I think is super nice. I had my laptop out, so I was just using the Photos app on my laptop, which made it a little bit faster, I think, than using my phone. And you are then looking at what connections there are. So I don't want to ruin it for you, but I wouldn't ruin it. I just mean it's so worth it to just dive in and let her explain it. I cannot recommend it, anymore. It was a fantastic exercise. I've done it for a couple of years now, and I highly recommend it. So I'm going to leave the link in the show notes for that. With that said, I am so excited about 2026. I'm excited for myself. I'm excited for you. It's going to be a great year. And already we have some really amazing guests lined up. Let me just say finally, before I let you go, that I get pitched on this podcast a lot. I'm talking every day. Probably 2 pitches a day would be an average. And I would say most of those pitches are a no, only because I am incredibly adamant about who I bring onto this podcast. I'm like a freak for quality control and for the caliber. I just want high caliber people who are bringing you very awesome things that you can use for your own life and your own business. So with that said, I have some amazing guests coming up, and Lauren Shaw is the next one from the Laurens, and it's all about how to make sales not be terrible and really how to unblock yourself from anything holding you back with sales and how to use that and do that with AI. So very, very cool intersection of sales and AI coming up next week. So with all that said, have a fantastic rest of your day, rest of your week, rest of our year. 2026 is going to be amazing. It's already my favorite year ever. All right, I'll see you on the next episode of Empire Secrets. Bye for now.